Assalamu alaikum. Salam. Important context surrounding the negotiations and what actually happened. Let's get into it.
President of the United States said this: you close it, meaning Hormuz, and you won't have a country. And then he says to the negotiators, you won't even make it back to your blanking country. And then they leave the room. What kind of a way is this to negotiate?
It's remarkably foolish. I mean, we all know that. I mean, it's just irresponsible to be making those sorts of comments and to be using that kind of language. Enough is enough. But the fact is that we've reached a point with President Trump where we expect this. And I think it's like water rolling off a duck's back at this point in time. I don't think the Iranians take this rhetoric that seriously. I think they roll their eyes and say, here we go again. The Russians do the same.
Do they trust him? Do the Iranians trust Trump? I mean, he bombed them at the time of the negotiating in June. He bombed them at the time of negotiations in February. Now he's threatening to assassinate them in Switzerland.
No, they don't trust the United States. No country in its right mind would trust the United States. In my opinion, no country in its right mind would trust a great power. You don't want to rely on trust. What you want to do is make sure that you have the capability to protect yourself in case the other side welches on the deal. And furthermore, you want to have sufficient military and economic power to make sure you get the best possible deal. But the Iranians, they don't trust the United States at all. And you could rest assured that once this war comes to an end, once we get an agreement, and hopefully we will get an agreement, the Iranians will build lots of missiles. They will give Hezbollah and the Houthis lots of missiles. They will go to great lengths to make sure that the next time they have to close the strait, they can do it with deadly effectiveness. They're going to prepare for the worst. And they'd be fools not to. You're dealing with the United States of America here, and you're dealing with President Trump. I'm sure you wouldn't trust President Trump if you were running Iran. I certainly wouldn't.
Yeah. Here is Vice President Vance. This is either yesterday or Sunday, talking about the president's trash talk.
What we told the Iranians yesterday is when you guys engage in what us millennials might call trash talk, you can't expect the president of the United States not to respond and not to correct the record. So when they say things that aren't true, the president is going to respond to it. I'm going to respond to it. Americans are going to respond to it. When they make threats that aren't rooted in reality, they have to accept that the president of the United States is actually going to set the record straight. That's all that happened. So yes, there was a little bit of threatening, there was a little bit of whining, but at the end of the day, the talks continued and we made great progress.
What threats did the Iranians make, John?
Zero.
Right.
And this is it, like, I know he's laughing, but it's deadly serious. It is deadly serious. Who would trust Trump in America? The last two times Iran negotiated perfidy, which is a war crime, basically, banned under international law. You cannot attack a country while you're in negotiations. But Trump and America have done that the last two times prior to these negotiations. No wonder Arachi and the other delegates from Iran are reluctant. They come with files, briefcases full of paperwork. They're ready to sit down. What do Witkoff and Kushner and Vance come with? Tripods and cameras to create content. It's embarrassing.
I mean, what Vance is trying to do is just put the best face on President Trump's misbehavior. What else can you say?
Yeah. What happens if the Israelis just keep marching through Lebanon and killing as FBI director? I don't know what it's called, but he's the equivalent of the FBI in Israel. Ben-Gvir has called for.
Well, there's two things that can happen here. One is that the Israelis refuse to get out of southern Lebanon and stop the bombing, and we're incapable, or we prove to be incapable, of stopping them. And the end result is the deal will be scuttled, and the economic consequences will be disastrous, and the blame will be on Israel. That's one possibility. The other alternative here is that Trump recognizes that the Israelis are resisting and that he has to up the coercive leverage on Israel. And he begins to put enormous pressure on Israel to get out of southern Lebanon and to stop the bombing. And the argument here, and I think this is the more likely outcome, although you can never be 100% sure, the more likely outcome is that Trump will up the ante, because the threat of the international economy going off the precipice is such a profound threat that he really has no choice but to play hardball with the Israelis. And by the way, if you look at public opinion polls, 67% of Americans support the deal. Just think about that, 67%.
That's just about the percentage that condemned the war.
Yeah, unsurprisingly.
Right.
So all that is to say that Trump can go to the American public. Of course, he has to deal with all these yahoos in Congress, right, who were bought and owned by the lobby. But he can go over their heads, go to the public, and he can tell the American people where we're headed. He can tell a more detailed story of what's happening to the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and the Commercial Petroleum Reserve and where we're headed and what that means economically and what that means not only for the American economy, but the world economy. He can lay that out. He's got 67% of the people behind him, and he can increase that number. And I think in those circumstances, despite all the support that Israel has on Capitol Hill and in the media, the Israelis will bend. They won't have any choice. I mean, just think about it. If you're Israel, do you want to be blamed moving forward for, number one, causing this war, for number two, not ending this war, and number three, for taking the international economy off a cliff? Is this good for Israel? I don't think so. I think the incentives for Israel, if they think about it, to shut this one down are enormous. It's in their best interest. I think the Israelis are remarkably foolish, as is the lobby, to pick a fight with Trump. It just doesn't make sense. It's just going to further poison relations between Israel and the Trump administration, do further damage to Israel's reputation in the United States, which is already in the toilet bowl. It just doesn't make any sense. The Israelis ought to understand they started a war that they thought they were going to win, and they lost. And it's a catastrophic defeat from their point of view. But the question is, how do you move forward?
How do you move forward? And speaking on the Strategic Petroleum Reserves, the reason fuels came down here in the UK, up in Newcastle, is because America flooded the market with their strategic petroleum reserves. The reserves are running out. We've got another 4 weeks. If this isn't resolved in 4 weeks, there's going to be serious pain to the West. Maybe that's when people will realise, but we'll just jump to the next part.
The only difference if Bennett takes over is a different personality, but the policies sound like they'll be identical.
Yeah, and as you've talked about on the show with various guests, if you look at the body politic inside of Israel, there is widespread support for the policies that are being pushed by the Netanyahu government. It's not like the public thinks one thing and the elites think another. They're all on the same page.
Mm-hmm. I mean, but I don't think that Ben-Gvir's words can be discounted, given the critical role he plays in the majority that Prime Minister Netanyahu requires under Israeli law to stay in office, and given the fact that he's the head of their FBI, he commands hundreds, maybe it's thousands, I don't know, of agents that work for him.
And look what Ben-Gvir did with the flotilla. The people that captured off the flotilla, Ben-Gvir went in mocking them, pushing them around, while the guards are beating them. So imagine what he does to the Palestinians when the cameras are off, or any Lebanese that they detain. It's frightening.
I agree with that, but there's a more important point to be made, Judge, and that is that moving forward, the number of Ben-Gvirs and Smotriches in Israeli society is going to increase, not decrease.
I don't know the Hebrew, obviously, so I don't know if this word was translated properly. But for him to say we should make Lebanon our playground, what could he have meant? He wants to slaughter these people. He's the same one that used the phrase mowing the grass with respect to the Palestinians in Gaza.
Look, if you go back to the period after October 7th, this October 7th, 2023, when the Palestinians in Gaza struck into Israel, and you look at what the Israeli elites were saying, it looked like commentary from the Third Reich. It was really remarkable. It was in many ways worse than what they're saying today. And again, this just highlights the extent to which Israel has become this murderous society that thinks that it can run around the world, invading countries, killing huge numbers of civilians, engaging in assassination. I mean, if you think about the Israeli policy of assassination and all of the leaders that they've assassinated over the past couple decades, it's truly remarkable. They just run around the Middle East assassinating people and invading countries and killing huge numbers of civilians.
Could they do all this if Donald Trump turned off the spigot?
Of course not. They can't do it without American support, right? They are, heavily dependent on the United States. As I've said to you before, the Israelis in the early days, and this was certainly true of the Zionists before 1948, prided themselves on being independent, not being dependent or not relying on another state for their security. They understood that we live in a self-help world and you have to be able to protect yourself. You don't want to be in a situation where you depend on another country, even the United States. That's not to say you don't want help from the United States, but you don't want to be dependent on the United States. But what's happened in recent decades is that the Israelis have become dependent on the United States. There's no way they could wage all these wars without support from the United States. And if the United States ever decided to play hardball with Israel, to shut down their barbaric behavior in this instance or that instance, they would have to stop immediately. We could easily bring them to their knees. This is a tiny country that's very vulnerable to American pressure, but we don't do that. In fact, we do the exact opposite. We support them no matter what they do, which allows the Smotriches and the Ben-Gvirs and the Netanyahus to purvey all these crazy policies that are damaging Israel and damaging the United States.
And this is very true. Just look at, after October 7th, what Netanyahu said, and multiple politicians in Israel have said, referring to the Palestinians as Amalek. And I've just pulled the quote up. The exact quote is, "Now go and strike Amalek and devotedly destroy all they have. Do not spare them, but kill both man and woman, child and infant, ox and sheep, camel and donkey." But no, they were just upset. They don't mean that really. Come on, man. Ben-Gvir, Smotrich, Netanyahu. As John Meirsheimer rightly points out, if they get rid of Netanyahu, the next people that come along are going to be just as hardline, if not more, right-wing. America need to cut their head. They need to finally do it. If they're going to continue with this genocidal murder spree, we need no part of it, because we are complicit. Read the book. But I just thought that was important to share.